The Souls games have a lot of bosses. Some are magnificent, engaging and just fun to fight, and some are just absolutely trash. But a lot of them tends to lean more towards the good side. While most of these bosses are highly praised by the community for the right reasons, some of them tend to feel a bit overrated. While on the other hand, you have some amazing bosses that barely get any appreciation at all. So today I wanted to go through all the Souls games and pick out the most overrated and underrated boss from each of the games, starting from Demon Souls all the way up to Elden Ring. Now if you want to see more content like this, then be sure to like and subscribe, and if you don't, then that's fine by me. Anyways, without wasting any more of your time, let's start with the first game on this list. Demon Souls. To be honest, I don't think there's a single boss in this game that I would consider overrated. A lot of them are fairly rated by the community. King Allant is probably the most praised one in this game, but even then, he's still not overrated. I feel like he gets enough praise but also enough criticism to make him fall within the fairly rated category. However, there is a boss in this game that's super underrated, and that's the Penetrator. The Penetrator's entrance has to be one of the coolest not only in the game but in the entire Souls series as well. Seeing this fat guy who was trolling me throughout the whole level get backstabbed by this knight was a satisfying moment. The Penetrator has one of the coolest knight designs in FromSoft history as well, and it's a shame that we couldn't get his armor without pre-ordering the game. That honestly sucks. Speaking of visuals, what I really like about his visual design is the super long sword and the red blood mist flowing around it. Now all that aside, his boss fight, while not being super mechanically complex, still provides enough satisfaction because it's just fun to dodge a lot of his attacks. And speaking of attacks, for a guy called the Penetrator, which is a sus ass name by the way, for some reason a lot of his attacks apart from one are slashes. His arena is also an underrated part of the fight, as the statues can be destroyed by him, giving the feeling of an actual battle. So all of that are the reason why I think the Penetrator is the most underrated boss in the game. Dark Souls 1. The most overrated boss in Dark Souls 1 in my opinion is definitely Ornstein and Smough. Now put your pitchforks down and let me explain myself. Ornstein and Smough is a good fight, don't get me wrong. They provide a good challenge, they're still one of the better duo fights in the actual series, and even though they are a duo fight, they are well balanced. Ornstein being the smaller fast one while Smough being the slower but heavy hitting one. They're good. But man, the way a lot of people describe them at first made me believe that they are genuinely the best boss fight in the entire game. Now I'm not saying that people aren't allowed to think that, but I was just a bit disappointed by them. Maybe it's the slower paced combat that's the issue, but I still found more enjoyment fighting Artorias, so maybe it's not that. However, again, this is just my opinion. Now for the most underrated boss in the game, I have to go with Quelaag. Now am I saying that Quelaag is better than Ornstein and Smough? No. But she's a decent boss that doesn't get enough credit. I mean, to this day I'm still shocked by how good her visual design is. The beautiful face and human upper body to the horrifying spider arachnid lower body. Her fight, just like the Penetrator, isn't super complex, but it's just engaging enough to be fun. Dark Souls 2. Now when it comes on to bosses in Dark Souls 2, a lot of them happens to be mid and not memorable. Now I know what you guys are thinking. Well, Dark Souls 1 had a lot of mid bosses. Which is true, but at least the bosses in Dark Souls 1 were a bit more memorable. And even the most diehard 2 fans can admit this as well. However, there are some gems among the rocks, some of them being Fume Knight, Sir Alon, and Ivory King. However, one of them that gets a bit too much praise in my opinion is Dark Lurker. Now before I say anything negative, the design of Dark Lurker is cool. I like the whole Dark Angel thing going on, some of its powers looks cool as well. However, the boss fight itself is rather mid. It's literally just a glorified duo fight, and having to focus on 2 enemies throwing bullshit at you all at once isn't super fun. No, I'm not saying that duo fights in general aren't fun, because they can be, and I'm also not saying that this is one of the worst ones because it isn't. However, something in this boss fight just didn't click for me, how it did for everyone else. Maybe the super annoying runback was the main reason, as in my mind I thought the runback being this long and terrible was because it was hiding something good, which in this case it just felt like a letdown. Again, I'm not saying that Dark Lurker is bad, it's just a disappointment, at least to me. Now for an underrated boss fight in Dark Souls 2, we have Looking Glass Knight. This is one of the most visually pleasing boss battles in the entire game, and shit, dare I say, maybe in the entire series. It's definitely in the top 15 for sure. Now the reason why visuals gets a lot of praise from me is because a lot of the other bosses tend to be in very grey and dull looking areas, while you have the Looking Glass Knight in his shiny armor on top of a castle with rain and lightning. It's a spectacle. The lighting is also pretty good here. His moveset is also cool to look at, especially his lightning attacks. The part of the fight that caught me by surprise though is when he summoned a whole other enemy just to kill you. That's cool as hell. All in all, he's just a cool boss and I'm surprised barely anyone talks about him. Now it's time for Dark Souls 3, a game that's praised for its high quality bosses. You have Pontiff Sullivan, who has a super great presence, Dark Eater Midir, which is considered by many to be the best dragon boss in the entire series, and Slave Knight Gale, who is the perfect balance of challenging and fun. Obviously there are some other bosses that a lot of people love, and one of these said bosses is none other than Sister Frieda. However, despite the amounts of praise that she gets, I think she's mad overrated. Okay, please chill and hear me out. Like, no, seriously, chill. I understand where most of the love comes from. Her first phase, while a bit gimmicky, is interesting, as after studying her pattern for her invisible jumps, it gets fun to locate and attack her because it's free damage. Her third phase, in my opinion, suffers from being a bit drawn out, but it's definitely fun due to how much her moveset changes and how fast and nimble she becomes. However, her second phase is generally what holds her back for me. I don't want to say it's pointless because story and lore wise it makes sense to why Father Ariandel wants to fight us, but I just think that it draws the fight out for way too long, and by the time the third phase arrives, I'm already mentally drained from the second phase. However, again, this is just my opinion, as I do think that she's still a wonderful boss encounter. It's just that the second phase really sucked for me. And what's crazy is that her second phase is the easiest, but again, it just feels drawn out. Now, the most underrated boss fight in Dark Souls 3 could go to 3 different bosses for me: the Twin Princes, the Demon Prince, and the Dragon Slayer armor. However, I have to go with the Twin Princes. The Dragon Slayer armor was in close second, but the Twin Princes are for sure the most underrated boss the entire game. The lore behind them is interesting, as Lorien, the first prince you fight, was a strong knight who led a battle against the Chaos Demons and even defeated the Demon Prince. However, this caused his armor and sword to be scorched by flames. He was also crippled and mute due to him succumbing to a curse. His brother was also cursed by being in a feeble and sick body. Together they make an excellent fight, as there's a lot of cool visual attacks. The fight is like the Promised Consort, but you know, at home, except it's way better in terms of balance. It's just a great fight that not a lot of people talk about. Now we have Bloodborne, and the most overrated boss in the game in my opinion is Ludwig the Holy Blade. Don't get me wrong, he's an amazing boss encounter, and let's not lie, his second phase cutscene will always be up there as one of the best Souls boss transitions. However, I do feel like the community overhypes him way too much, especially since his first phase is extremely mid. Not bad, but mid. His second phase, however, is really great, as it shows him regaining his humanity, at least mentally, and now he wields a Moonlight Greatsword. This part of the fight is great, as his moveset changes to fit more of a swordsman, and the bright green aura of the sword really makes the fight visually pleasing. However, again, the first phase is just the weakest part of the whole encounter, since it's just him acting like a wild beast and having some insanely high damaging surprise attacks. But again, he's still up there as one of my favorite Bloodborne bosses. He's just a bit overrated though, that's it. Now, a super underrated boss fight in the game is Martyr Logarius. His fight takes place on top of a castle in a secret location. He's a challenging boss that wields a scythe and a straight sword as his weapons of choice. He uses curse magic that deals a great amount of damage, and he's super nimble as well. He has a lot of cool attacks and he's challenging in nature, so I'm not sure why people don't talk about him. Well, I'm not going to say I'm not sure why, because it could be that a lot of people just never encountered him, since again he's a side boss in a secret optional area. Sekiro. In my opinion, there aren't any bosses in Sekiro that I think are overrated. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of them are properly rated by the community. For example, Ishin the Sword Saint is a boss that people hypes up a lot, and it's for a damn good reason. He's literally the best boss in the entire game, in my opinion. Everything you've learned throughout the game comes full circle in his boss encounter. Now, the only boss that I thought was slightly overrated was Owl Father, mostly due to how long and drawn out the fight was. And even then, after fighting him multiple times, I started to see where the hype was coming from. So yeah, overall, there aren't any bosses that I would consider overrated in the game, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people might have some in their mind. If so, leave a comment below and point out which boss do you think is the most overrated. Now, when it comes down to underrated bosses, Sekiro has many of them, but the one that stood out to me the most was True Corrupted Monk. I'm surprised to see how little people talk about the monk. Sure, she doesn't have the same presence and story importance of Ishin, but she's a great boss regardless of that. Her arena is beautiful, as it's a bridge surrounded by gorgeous looking trees. The design of the monk herself looks interesting as well. Now, visuals aside, the boss fight itself is just straight up fun. The first phase operates just like your standard Sekiro boss. There aren't any gimmicks or anything, just straight up deflection. After triggering her second phase, you can either fight her outright, but now she has clones that can't be locked onto, so you have to position yourself in their direction of attack to deflect them, or you can just skip the phase by stealth killing her from the top of a branch. The last phase is simple but terrifying, no pun intended, as she grows out a terror-inflicting centipede from her head. The fight remains the same, however she will sometimes break the flow of combat to vomit something onto you that builds up terror. This is the only weak part of the fight, as terror is one of the worst mechanics in Sekiro as it can insta-kill you. However, that doesn't change the fact that this is a great boss that is truly underrated. Elden Ring. Now when it comes on to bosses that I find a bit overrated in this game, I have many, but two of them stand out to me the most, and that's Dragon Lord Placidusax and Star Scourge Radahn. The only reason why I say both are overrated is because Placidusax, for example, while cool looking, he does tend to stay in one place a lot, and then his second phase he barely gives you any chance to hit him, as he's always moving around. Now it may seem like I just contradicted myself since I'm complaining about him not moving, then when he does it's an issue, but here's the thing. I think that his first phase can be excused, however his second phase is absolutely annoying to deal with at times, especially since he has a lot of health. The constant teleporting and flying does provide a spectacle, but I just wish they toned it down a bit. Now when it comes on to Radahn, I just realized that dealing with his moveset and attack patterns isn't as fun as other bosses. Maybe it's because he's riding a horse and it makes some of his attack windups confusing. And another thing about him is that after the first time fighting him on subsequent playthroughs, whether it's with summons or not, doesn't hit the same. Which is the opposite of most other bosses, as a lot of times I will not like a boss on my first playthrough, but after fighting them multiple times I came to enjoy them. But again, Radahn is just the opposite for me. Now if I had to choose which of these bosses were the most overrated, I would definitely have to go with Dragon Lord, as at least with Radahn it doesn't feel like a chore. But with Placidusax the fight just feels unnecessarily long and drawn out. He's still a great first time experience though. Now when it comes on to underrated bosses, I think that I might have to go with Ramina, Saint of the Bud. Ramina is one of the bosses in Shadow of the Erdtree that I wished was talked about more. She has terrifying yet beautiful visuals, cool looking attacks, and an engaging moveset. She has an amazing OST and her lore is also interesting. The only downside to her boss fight is that there isn't any cutscene for her. Now while she may not be my favorite boss in the game, as that title goes to Mesmer, and yes I don't care, I'm the #1 Mesmer glazer, she's still up there in my top 15 or even top 10. Again, she's just an amazing boss that deserves more love. A honorable mention I would like to point out is the Death Knight, who should have been an actual overworld boss instead of being locked behind a catacomb, and the Bell-Bearing Hunters. So those were my picks for the most overrated and underrated bosses from each Souls game. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments who's the most overrated and underrated bosses of each game. Remember, if you want to see more content like this, then be sure to hit like and subscribe, only if you want to do that, because if you don't, then that's fine by me. Anyways, I hope you guys have a good one.